Hi, and welcome to the Pink Movement podcast with your host, Christy Collier. Each episode, you'll hear from some awesome people in and around the breast cancer world, sharing their wisdom on all things health and well-being. You'll hear simple information, practical advice, and useful tips to help you stress less, move more, and feel better.
Hello and welcome to the first ever episode of the Pink Movement podcast. My name is Christy Collier. I am a 4.5-year breast cancer survivor, almost 5, and I'll be your host. I am so excited to be bringing this podcast to you, which is a real passion project of mine. So please let me tell you a little bit about it. This podcast is specifically for those with a breast cancer diagnosis, which if you're listening to this, I'm assuming is you. Or it may even be somebody you know and you're listening to help them out. With a focus on all things health and well-being, the purpose is to provide you with simple information, practical advice, and helpful tips to help you stress less, move more, and feel better. Now, I'm certainly no expert, so each fortnight I'll be interviewing people from within and around the breast cancer world. We'll learn a little bit about them, who they are and what they do. Then they'll share their wisdom and knowledge with us, as well as providing you with some practical advice and tips to implement during your breast cancer journey. We're going to be talking with our guests about a whole range of things. It could be nutrition, exercise, mindset, basically anything that will make focusing on your health and well-being super simple. It's really about looking at what you can do for yourself outside of the work the medical professionals are already doing. So how did this podcast come about and why am I doing it? Well, shortly after I was diagnosed with breast cancer, I had this overwhelming feeling of helplessness. My medical team were doing everything they could for me, but I really wanted to be doing something to help myself. So I spoke to my oncologist and I did a plethora of research and I found the answer. And that was that I could focus on my own health and well-being. This meant exercising, moving as often as I could, eating nutritious, wholesome foods, and focusing on the way I thought about things. I learned that these things are so vitally important to anyone with a breast cancer diagnosis. My oncologist actually made it very clear to me that exercising every day would not only help with the side effects of my treatment, but post-treatment may help prevent cancer from returning. And there's plenty of research to support that. Don't get me wrong, some days all I wanted to do was sit on the couch and binge watch TV with some chocolate, and some days I did just that. But most days I tried to get out and do some sort of exercise. Some days are better than others. I might do, a 10 or 15 minute walk one day, while others I could do a workout at home or even get to the gym. I tried really hard to eat well. It didn't always work, but I tried. And I really worked on improving my mindset through learning to meditate. Not only was it great to be focusing on something other than my breast cancer, but I could actually see and feel the impact this was having on me. My side effects from the chemotherapy were minimal. So I didn't suffer from fatigue or nausea or physical aches and pains, and I slept reasonably well. My physical recovery after surgery with my range of motion was excellent. I was able to manage and maintain my weight during treatment, and mentally I was clear and focused on my recovery. And this really brings me to the podcast. One of the big problems I came across was finding all the health and well-being information I needed, and I wanted it to be breast cancer specific. I found that there was lots of information out there, but it was a bit all over the place. So I decided to start bringing it together to make it so much easier for women just like you to find, and hopefully to help you with your health and well-being through your breast cancer journey. Now, the reason I've chosen to do a podcast is that it's just so easily accessible for you. You can pretty much listen anytime, anywhere. It's completely free. You can listen on your phone, your iPad, your iPod, and even in your car. You can do it while you're out walking, taking a rest at home, in a waiting room, or even whilst you're getting your chemo. Simply flick it on, maybe close your eyes for a bit, take a few big deep breaths, relax, and enjoy it. Now, I really hope you can join me throughout this podcast series, which has been created with you in mind. Now, no topic in the health and wellness space is off limits. So if you want to hear about something in particular or have a suggestion for an interview, please contact me on christy@thepinkmovement.com.au. I would love to hear from you. Now, let's get into it. This introductory episode is going to be a little bit different. There's no interview. As your host, I'm going to spend some time introducing myself and sharing my story. Now, I know every story is different, but I hope there's something you can relate to in mine. So here goes. My name is Christy Collier. I am a 39-year-old breast cancer survivor. I'm also a mum, a fiance, a senior manager, a student, a dragon boater, and now a podcaster. I live with my fiance Daniel and our beautiful daughter Charlie, who is just 4 months old. Although I now live in Sydney, I grew up in a town called Queanbeyan, which is just outside of Canberra. My entire family lives there still, and I absolutely love the place. I love to travel, and I've travelled the world, including living in the UK for the best part of 3 years, an amazing time in my life. I love to learn and have both undergrad and postgrad university degrees. Some would say I'm a glutton for punishment, as I'm now midway through an MBA, which is taking a long time to finish. I'm a sports tragic. Netball, basketball, touch footy, golf, dragon boating, you name it, I've probably given it a go. I also watch pretty much everything. I'm a diehard rugby league fan and the Tigers are my team. I love the Suncorp Super Netball and the NBL and the WNBL. I'm also partial to a bit of cricket in the summer, and these days I'm finding a real interest in the World Series darts, which is a bit crazy, I know, but I really enjoy it. I'd say I've had a pretty blessed life. And for me, life was going swimmingly up until December 2002, which is really where my breast cancer story begins. Whether I like it or not, breast cancer is now a part of my life. It's had an enormous impact on me and my family. My mum was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2002. Now, she fought it bravely for many, many years. However, sadly lost her battle in February 2009 at the age of just 54. At that time, I was 30, my brother Brent 27, and my younger brother Ryan just 25. So we were pretty young to lose our mum. She was an amazing lady, an absolute inspiration, and I miss her every day. Cruelly, just 3 years after she passed in July 2012, at the age of 34, I myself was diagnosed with breast cancer. The biopsies indicated that it was pretty big and growing fast, so within a matter of weeks, I was rushed through for surgery to remove my right breast. It turns out I had a grade 2, 8.5 centimetre lobular cancer. Now, whilst the operation was a success in removing the tumour and lymph nodes coming back negative, because of the sheer size and to try and ensure any cancer cells remaining were zapped and eradicated, I then underwent chemotherapy for 3 months, followed by 25 hits of radiation. Now, given that both Mum and I were so young when we were diagnosed, it wasn't long after that I was put through the genetic testing. And it turns out I was, and am, a carrier of the BRCA2 gene mutation. Now, for the average person, this diagnosis would mean a significantly increased risk of breast and ovarian cancer. For me, it meant 4 very significant things. Firstly, I would have an increased risk of a second breast cancer within 5 years of the first on the other side. Now, even though this was only a slight increase in risk, I decided that I didn't want to take that chance. So I decided to remove my other breast. That meant that just 12 months after my breast cancer diagnosis and initial mastectomy on my right breast, I had my left breast removed as well, leaving no tissue in either side. So no more boobs for me. However, I have since gone down the path of reconstruction with implants on both sides. For me, it was about feeling as comfortable as possible. Secondly, I learned that the gene mutation put me at high risk of ovarian cancer. So the recommendation is that at 40, which is next year for me, I have my ovaries removed, and this will essentially put me into early menopause. Thirdly, my siblings and my mother's siblings would all need to be tested for the BRCA2 gene mutation. Now, as it turns out, my aunt, my mum's only sister, and my only aunt is also a carrier. Unfortunately, she has since been diagnosed with both breast and ovarian cancer. But man, she is fighting it with everything she's got, and she is doing a bloody good job of it. And lastly, my baby girl, Charlie, may now also be a carrier of this gene mutation, which, as you can imagine, as a mum, is absolutely terrifying. We won't test her until she's older and pray that by then there are cures. But at least we know to test, and if she is a carrier, early detection will provide us with some options. Whilst my breast cancer diagnosis, surgery and treatments and recovery was bloody hard, I was lucky enough to have the support of my then long-term partner. He was so supportive, caring, and did many practical and wonderful things for me during this time. I especially loved that he always kept me laughing when times were tough. The Daily Telegraph's Body and Soul supplement even published an article on us called The Power of a Partner Support. It gave some practical tips for the guys out there and really encouraged them to step up and support their partners in any way that they could. Unfortunately, our relationship didn't last, and after 10 years together, we parted ways. As you could imagine, splitting after so long, having been through so much together, was incredibly hard for us both. But life works in crazy ways, and while that door closed, another one opened. My now fiancé, Daniel, and I worked together and had been friends for a year or so when we started seeing each other. We began spending some time together, just the two of us, and from that a relationship formed, and it's just been lovely ever since. He's an amazing person. He pushes me to be the best version of myself and has really encouraged me to share my story and create this podcast. We are soppily completely in love with each other, and we both couldn't be happier. Late last year, on a holiday to Thailand, he surprised me by proposing. And I obviously said yes, which is very exciting. So there'll be a wedding sometime in the future for us. But probably not too soon, because we currently have our hands full in that we have been absolutely blessed to have earlier this year given birth to our beautiful little baby girl. Charlotte, or Charlie as we call her, was a bit of a miracle baby. Considering I'd been through chemo, radiotherapy, had a good few years of medication, which stopped me ovulating, and I was the ripe old age of 38, the chances of me falling pregnant were incredibly slim. And I can't recall the exact percentage they gave me, but it was something like less than 5%. I remember just thinking, man, this is just not going to happen. On top of that, my oncologist had essentially given me a window of time to try and fall pregnant. And that window was the year of 2016. Now, having only starting to see Daniel in late 2015, having that conversation with him, as you could imagine, was incredibly difficult. But honestly, it couldn't have gone any better. He was all in and it was all systems go. We were told IVF would give us the best chance of conceiving, so we started that process. A few appointments and checks, and we were booked and ready to get it underway. Now, it was the Monday of the week we were due to start IVF, and I wasn't feeling well. I'd gone home from work, feeling nauseous, and just continued to feel that way throughout the day and early evening. Although it could have been anything, I just had this weird feeling. So I popped up to the chemist for a pregnancy test, and what do you know? We were pregnant. As you could imagine, we were absolutely ecstatic. Such a roller coaster of emotions. The pregnancy went incredibly smoothly, and our beautiful little girl Charlie was born on the 10th of January this year, healthy and happy and just an absolute joy. Her big gummy smile just makes my day every day, and I'm just so looking forward to seeing her grow. Let me tell you a little bit about my dragon boating. It was around July 2013 that I came across Dragons Abreast Australia. Now, I made contact with the group nearest me, which was Dragons Abreast Sydney, to go along and try it out. I was very nervous as I still had no hair and was physically recovering from treatment. But I need not have worried as I was welcomed with open arms. And it was then I knew I was onto something pretty special. For me, not only was the sport of dragon boating exciting and fun, and it was just invigorating being out on the water, but I had stumbled across this absolutely wonderful group of women and a couple of men who were not only caring and thoughtful and understanding, but they promoted an active lifestyle to aid in the recovery from breast cancer. Now, the impact this organisation has had on me personally has been so significant. My health and fitness returned and then improved out of sight. I found that paddling and socialising with others who had travelled the same or a similar path as me really helped me regain my confidence. And it's really guided me down the path of becoming an advocate for the benefits of exercise and a healthy lifestyle to aid in the recovery of breast cancer. So much so that I took up a position as a director on the board of Dragons Abreast Australia in 2014, and now I'm creating this podcast. As I mentioned at the start, whether I like it or not, breast cancer is a part of my life. I mean, I'd love for it not to be. I wish it didn't exist, but it does exist, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. To say the years of my life involving breast cancer have been challenging is an understatement. Having to go through it with my mum, myself, and now my aunt has just been so incredibly hard, not only for me, but for my entire family. But I've never looked at myself with pity. I've never let the situation take over my life, and I've just never given up. I love the saying, life is 10% what happens, 90% how you respond, because this is exactly how I've tried to live my life. Breast cancer for me has reshaped who I am, but in a really positive way. I see the world differently, and I know this sounds bizarre, but I feel I'm a genuinely better person. So rather than wish it away, I have decided to accept it. I've decided to give back and do what I can to help others with breast cancer. Thanks for listening to my story. I hope it's helped you get to know me just a little bit better as we start this podcast journey together. Don't forget, so you don't miss an episode, subscribe to the podcast through iTunes and jump onto thepinkmovement.com.au and join our email list. I really hope you enjoy the podcast and get something out of it. I've thoroughly enjoyed developing it and bringing it to you. So thank you. Enjoy the future episodes and take care.
Thanks for listening to the Pink Movement podcast. For episode notes, links and downloads, head to thepinkmovement.com.au. Like what you're hearing? Join our Facebook page, subscribe through iTunes, and while you're there, provide a quick review. Want to help out? You can support the ongoing production of this podcast by becoming a patron. Find all the details on the website. The Pink Movement podcast, helping you to stress less, move more, and feel better.